You're listening to Hashtag No Filter with Zack Peter. That's me, your naturally platinum blonde pop culture connoisseur. I'm the reality TV junkie, self-improvement addict, and host with only the hottest tea spilled fresh weekly. For more hot takes, go and give me a follow at Just Plain Zack. I always keep it funny and I always keep it cute. And if you're like me and you want to stay up to date with the latest reality tea, just go and give us a follow at No Filter with Zack on the Instagram, or you can always join our private Facebook group. The link is in the description below. If you're watching this on the YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give it a like, leave a comment because I love that validation, and don't forget to hit that little bell button for notifications so you're always getting notified when there is fresh tea to be spilled like today. It is still summer, and I hope right now on this Monday, or whatever day you're listening to this week's podcast, that you are enjoying some of my no-filter wine, my no-filter rosé. It is going to get you litty-city all summer long, but there's less than a gram of sugar in it, so you're not going to be hurting tomorrow. I can promise you that. These are strong. These babies pack a punch, and I will be launching an all-new Potomac can very, very soon. We have one inspired by Real Housewives of Atlanta, New York, Beverly Hills, and New Jersey. The one I've got here today says, now tell me who gon' check me, boo, because that's the vibe that I've got going in on this week's podcast. I almost said in studio, but I'm not in studio right now. I'm in my apartment taping, but I am going to be taping again in studio very soon. I did with Harry Jowsey, and there will hopefully be more studio sessions to come and lots more good guests to come. I had Gigi Golnessa from Shahs of Sunset. She is on the show this Wednesday. We had a very, very good interview. Lots of laughs. And she gets a little feisty with me, and I like it. And she spills a lot of good Shahs of Sunset dish. So you're going to want to tune into that this Wednesday on Hashtag No Filter with Zack Peter. And like I said, if you haven't done so yet, please stock up on some No Filter wine at nofilterwine.com. These cans are going to get you real turned, and you're going to be loving it all summer long. Please send me your pics so that I can repost them. I love to share all of that love with you guys. As I mentioned, book club, our Bravo book club is going to be starting up on August 24th. We are going to start with Dorinda Medley's new book, Make It Nice. That's her new book. It comes out on August 17th, this Tuesday. So you're going to want to order yourself a copy, and then we'll be breaking down. So the book itself is only 9 chapters, so I think we'll do 3 chapters a week. So starting on August 24th, we will be breaking down the first 3 chapters. We're going to go live on our Instagram account at No Filter with Zack, and we're going to talk about the book. And it is a good book. I'm actually really enjoying and appreciating it. I've been reading it because Dorinda is going to be on my podcast next week. But it's actually a really, really good read. So get your copy of Make It Nice by Dorinda Medley right now. I do have a link in the description below if you want to order it so you can join book club with all of us. Wow, I just realized I have a La Croix sitting there in the back. I should have cleaned up the setting a little bit, but you can tell it's Monday. But yes, get your copy of Make It Nice by Dorinda Medley. I do have an Amazon link below that you can order the book from. It is an affiliate link, so I'm disclosing that I do make a little percentage of that. It doesn't charge you anymore, but I get a percentage of that referral. So just want to disclose all of that. So if you want to support the podcast, go and buy Dorinda's book, and let's start off book club August 24th. All right, we have so much tea to spill. There is a new Housewives spinoff coming to Peacock. Ronald Richards has been tweeting up a storm with some other stuff. We have more Girardi tea. He's refusing to testify in court, and we'll break that down. Some new Real Housewives of New York casting tea, Salt Lake City trailer, lots of good stuff that we're going to be breaking down. So where should we start? Why don't we start with Peacock? So there is a new Peacock show. So we know that there was the Housewives Vacation mashup show where we had Teresa and Melissa from Jersey. We had Kyle from Beverly Hills. We had Luann and Ramona from New York. And then from Atlanta, we had Kenya Moore and Cynthia Bailey. And everyone was kind of like, that sounds like it's going to be kind of boring. It doesn't seem like a really exciting cast. Why do we have Cynthia? Why do we have Kyle? Why do we have Melissa Gorga? Jan? But that show is already filmed. We have yet to see a trailer. We have yet to have an air date for that. I would presume it would air probably sometime in September because nobody's really going to want to watch a vacation show in like October through the end of the year. I think September makes the most sense, especially if it's only going to be a few episodes. But now there are rumors that there is another mashup series that is going to be coming. It's not going to be like a tropical vacation series, but it is going to be a Housewives mashup. And it's apparently going to be anchored by none other than Miss Dorinda Medley. We know that she is back in Bravo's good graces now that she was on Watch What Happens Live. She has her book coming out. She talks about her being put on pause by the network in the book. It's actually a really good book. I'm not just saying that because I want you guys to buy it. I actually am thoroughly enjoying it. It's really fun. It's not as, I'm only halfway through it. It's not as like super like housewivesy juicy. A little bit in the first chapter, but it's actually like you really get to know her, and she's a really great storyteller. So I'm appreciating the read. But yes, so in this new mashup series, we have Dorinda Medley that's supposed to be anchoring the show. We have Vicky Gunvalson from Real Housewives of Orange County. We have Phaedra Parks from Real Housewives of Atlanta. We have Brandi Glanville from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. We have Taylor Armstrong, another OG from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And then we have Jill Zarin, an OG from the Real Housewives of New York. None of these women are currently on any of the shows, so I think this was like a former Housewives mashup that Bravo was trying to do. They haven't officially announced it as like an All-Stars. Originally, people were saying that this was going to be like a second season to their All-Star series. I don't know if they're doing that show in seasons. It looks like they're just doing different series of that mashup batch. So I don't think this is necessarily a second season as much as it's going to be its own spin-off series. What it's actually going to be called is still up in the air. The original mashup series or All-Star series, All-Stars is what we all the fans have been calling it, but that has yet to have like an official title. The title hasn't been solidified yet. I know they were thinking of calling it Mashup, which I think is just a terrible name, but once it takes off, probably we'll all just start referencing it by mashup. But as of right now, we're still all calling it All-Stars. And so I know some people were like, oh, well, this new cast with Dorinda and Brandi and Jill and Phaedra and Vicky, these aren't the All-Stars, these are the rejects. And I mean, yeah, they are the ones that definitely want back on the Housewives that probably won't be getting a contract anytime soon, with exception for Dorinda. I think they may actually try to bring Dorinda back, and I actually think she'll do it. I think she loves the show so much that she would be willing to do the Peacock series, and that was probably part of like her condition or her a condition for her to be brought back onto Housewives is if she did this mashup series, because Bravo knew that she definitely is a fan favorite, and if anybody could anchor one of these shows, it could definitely be Dorinda, because I don't think there really was an anchor on the vacation show that they taped with Kyle and Ramona and Luann and Teresa and Kenya. Like, I don't know. I don't think that was a very good mix. I don't think there was going to be any real cohesion, at least with this cast. You know there's going to be drama. You know there's going to be scandal. You know there's going to be lots of like F-bombs, and there's likely to be a fight, and Dorinda's going to make it nice. And it just, to me, I'm excited about this new mashup series than I am about the original, because the original kind of looks like a Snorfest, TBH. So there's that. We don't know when it'll actually be airing. I would assume this will probably air like in December. I think the original mashup series will come in September, and I would envision this one will come before the end of the year, likely December-ish. We'll see. I don't have any confirmation of that. I don't have any sources with that. That's my own independent prediction. Let's talk about Ronald Richards, a.k.a. Ronald McDonald, because he has been tweeting up a storm lately. And of course, if he's tweeting stuff, you're sending it to me and you're like, what is going on? What is Ronald Richards tweeting about now? So yesterday, he tweeted on his Twitter account, update on Lisa Rinna and Erika Jayne. We can confirm that Lisa actually referred Erika Girardi to her current business manager. There is a high level of trust between them. Lisa Rinna is defending her publicly. We will also confirm that the receivable owed by EJ Global is based on value received. Okay, so we will there are two parts to that tweet, and I don't necessarily think that they connect necessarily, but okay, so here's what we do know. Does Lisa Rinna and Erika Jayne have the same manager? Yes, it is Michael Ullman. Is it really that shocking that they share a manager? No. I shared this on my Instagram story last night basically saying that how it works here with representation in the entertainment industry, because I actually interviewed, I was represented by A3, which was formerly Abrams Artist Agency, their podcast division. And so I interviewed my podcast agent, I believe February 2020 is when the interview came out, or around that time is when the interview came out, about how to get an agent, what's the difference between agents and managers. So I kind of got the scoop on how that whole world works. And so a lot of people come to LA or come to Hollywood and they send in their headshots, they send in their resumes, they try to get an agent, they try to get a manager. Some people don't even know the difference between agents and managers. But basically, and a lot of agencies, a lot of the big ones, like the one that reps Rinna and Erica, they don't take, their websites usually say we don't accept unsolicited inquiries or unsolicited submissions. So this basically means that the only way to get representation through these big entertainment firms or agencies or management companies is through referrals. So talent either refers other talent, or sometimes agents will refer other talent. So like me, when I came into A3, it was a referral from another agent that referred me over to an agent in the podcast division that was like, hey, this looks like a really good podcast. You should look into this. I think you guys should take a meeting. So you have to be referred. If I were to send out cold calls to random agents that I had no pre-established relationship with, or had relationships with somebody that could refer me, I likely wouldn't get representation, because I don't believe that they're allowed to like accept those types of inquiries. I mean, the interview, it was on the Adulting podcast. I did it last year, early in last year, like at the beginning of all the COVID stuff, or the beginning of the lockdowns. And I haven't listened to it since then, but they're not allowed to accept any submissions that come in from talent themselves. There has to be a referral. So it's not uncommon for talent to refer other talent to a manager or an agent. So Erica was also brought on a couple years ago. It wasn't even anything recently or anything like, I want to say it was like 5 years ago that Erica ended up getting representation by Michael, and I believe it's UTA. Don't quote me on that because I didn't put that in my notes, but I believe they're both repped by UTA, which is a really big podcast agency, or sorry, not a podcast agency, but it's a really big talent agency. So again, it's not uncommon. A lot of people share the same managers, they share the same agents, they share the same publicists. Lisa Rinna and Denise Richards both share the same publicist, Jill Fritzo. Brandi Glanville and Denise Richards also both shared the same agent. So it's like, it's not uncommon. And just because two people are represented by the same party doesn't necessarily mean that there is a big connection. Now, I mean, I guess it was a bad example to bring up Brandi and Denise, only because I believe I don't think Brandi had anything to do with Denise being cast on the show, because they've been trying to get Denise on Beverly Hills for a while. But I do believe that that their agent tried to, get them both on the show at the same time because they were both his clients. So yes, there are conditions like that where, if an agent represents multiple clients in the same category, sometimes there are opportunities for both of them. But what I'm basically getting at is it's not uncommon, and it's not a red flag to me that Lisa Rinna referred Erica to her talent manager. Like, to me, that's not shocking, nor is that much of a big deal. It doesn't mean anything, essentially. And then the second part of Ronald's tweet was about the receivables. So he said, we will also confirm that the receivable owed by EJ Global is based on value received. And so how I interpret that tweet, because again, one thing that I don't really love about Ronald Richards, I used to really like him as a credible source at the beginning of all of this. I had him on my show. Like, I need to preface that he was a really good, reliable source. And then I think when a lot of the attention started to come and he got fans and, he saw that he was getting picked up in the press, now his tweets are really just a lot of speculation that don't actually mean anything. And so basically what I am interpreting that last part of the tweet, which doesn't seem to be related to Lisa Rinna at all, at least not directly, and there has yet to be any proof that Erica actually invested into Rinna Beauty. And I know Lisa Rinna on Watch What Happens Live disputed that rumor and said that that's absolutely false, that Erica did not invest in her company at all. And again, I'm not a Lisa Rinna fan or an Erika Jayne fan. I'm not a fan. I look at the cast. I'm not a stan for any of them. I'm not a diehard for any of them. These are the two that just happen to be brought up by Ronald Richards, and that's the only reason we're talking about it. But so when we're talking about the receivable that's owed, that is instead of Tom giving Erika's company, EJ Global, money directly, and this was part of my original theory of what I thought was happening with that $20 to $25 million loan that is speculated or that is assumed or that we think went to EJ Global from Girardi Keese. It's basically saying that instead of giving cash transfers, it was done, the money was given in value received. So instead of him, for example, giving her $100 to pay for her glam squad, he was paying the glam squad directly and then writing that off as a loan that was given to EJ Global. So it was just the value of what was received at EJ Global, not necessarily the exact money and dollar amount. Ronald has yet to clarify any of that, but then yet again, Ronald has yet to show anything, to be honest. And that's why I've stopped really relying on him as a source altogether, because it's a lot of vague insinuations. It's a lot of, vague implications. It's a lot of speculation, but there's no real merit to any of it. I even said that I looked into whether or not EJ Global or Erika or the Pretty Mess LLC, if any of that was an investor for Rinna Beauty, and I couldn't find, I don't know what paper trail he's talking about necessarily, but there doesn't seem to be one. And I feel like the reason he keeps bringing these things up and throwing them out there is because he doesn't really have anything. I mean, it's been, 7-8 months now since the LA Times article broke out in the press where it really looked incriminating for Erika Jayne, and yet we still have yet to see any proof that she had any involvement in Tom's business directly. There's no paper trail. There's no money trail. As far as I'm aware, she has already turned over her books to the investigation. Whether or not they found anything, I think that's probably why Ron Richards continues to tweet out this stuff, is because he hasn't really found anything and he isn't really able to prove anything. And that's why he has to keep throwing out these wild accusations that don't really mean anything, but that get him attention and that get him press pickups and that get him just people being like, yeah, people that want to see Erika burn at the stake. If she's going to burn at the stake, she's going to burn at the stake. I'm not trying to prevent her from burning at the stake. I'd want to see if she's guilty before we burn her at the stake, and we have yet to actually see any documentation or paper trail or anything. None of that has been released. So it's all kind of still up in the air, and we think that this is happening, but we don't have any proof of it. Another thing that I keep seeing people send me is the letter, and this is what got press pickup, is the letter that he sent out to Bravo and to the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills production company, which people, I think, misinterpreted it as him requesting unaired footage, but that's not actually what the letter was. The letter basically said, it was a letter that he sent to the network and to the production companies that produce Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, saying, in the event that we need the footage, make sure you have the footage ready. Which tells me that we haven't yet reached the event where they need access or where the judge has allowed authorization for them to request unaired footage from the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So what does the letter mean? The letter doesn't mean anything. It's another attention-seeking tactic. It's smoke and mirrors, and it's just it's disappointing for me because, again, that's somebody that I gave a platform to a few months ago on my show that I thought was a reliable source, because this is somebody that was really investigating the whole Girardi scandal and supporting and helping the bankruptcy. But there is yet to be any actual information that has come out of any of this. And I get it. You don't want to show all your hands to the public, but at the same time, when you're constantly tweeting all of these things, it shows that you're not really afraid to show your hand because you're throwing out all these big accusations. If he had something, I'm pretty sure he would be sharing or tweeting it. He tweets about everything else and everyone else. So the Lisa Rinna and Erika Jayne stuff doesn't, other than them being good friends and Lisa Rinna defending her friend, which I think if any of us were in a similar situation, our friend was like, I'm innocent, I think we would probably want to believe our friend. Whether or not that's the truth or the reality is still yet to be determined. But I think, if I had a friend that was in the position that Erica was in, I can understand being loyal to my friend. And if they really are having conversations and questions are being answered or not being answered, I don't know. That's their friendship. And to be honest, I don't really care about their friendship if it's not in any way related to the scandal itself with Tom Girardi, who, again, is the main person that we should be focusing on. But so when it comes to him requesting the footage, he hasn't actually officially requested the footage. He just told Bravo, hey, just in case I need the footage, make sure you have it ready. The unaired footage. Just make sure you have it ready. I don't even think Bravo's responded. They're probably like, okay, cool. But I don't think they've, to my knowledge, they haven't officially said, or maybe they have say that they're willing to cooperate should they need to cooperate. But as of yet, I don't believe there's been any official request to have Bravo cooperate. So, it was also like when Ronald Richards was saying, oh, we're going to use what Erica says against her on the show. We're going to use that. We're going to use whatever she says on the show and we can use it against her. And then he was on Heather McDonald's podcast and he was even on my podcast saying that he can't use whatever she says on the show because all that matters is whatever she says when she's under oath. So, again, it's like these big buzzy statements that are made. Very interestingly worded because, again, it implies something, but it doesn't directly show him making an accusation of anything. So that's what we also have to be very mindful of, is that the wording of it all is very intentional, I believe. It's very intentional and it's part of a attention-seeking tactic. Now, Lisa Rinna is irrelevant to the Girardi stuff. Erica Jane is relevant. She's being investigated. But now there are two other players, and I talked about this on Thursday's Instagram Live. So every Thursday night, we all go live together on the Instagram, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. We go live on Instagram. I talked about it there, so this may be a little bit repetitive if you guys tuned into the Thursday Live, but I'm just going to briefly recap it for anybody that may have missed that. We have two former partners of Girardi Keese that are now being dragged into all of this, or being dragged into the Lion Air lawsuit. So they were apparently two lawyers that worked on the Lion Air case and have since departed from the law firm. The first one is David Lira, who happens to be Tom Girardi's son-in-law, and then the second one is Keith Griffin. These are both former partners at Girardi Keese. They're neither gentleman is with Girardi Keese anymore. So they have a contempt proceeding that's happening to see if they were involved in the missing funds from the Lion Air case. So this was the widows and orphans that are being referred to in the Lion Air case. That's the big lawsuit that kind of really pulled the card and had the whole house of cards fall down in the whole alleged Ponzi scheme. However, you want to classify the entire scandal that Tom Girardi has been a part of. They're trying to see if David and Keith have any sort of legal responsibility. They're saying that they tried to get Tom to pay up. They said that they wanted him to pay the settlement money, but he wasn't for whatever reason. They also said they had zero control over the funds. They didn't have access to the funds. That was all Tom Girardi. He's the one that was in charge of the money. They tried to get him to pay up the settlement money, and they said he didn't or refused to. David Lira also says that this is what led to a big blowout between him and Tom, and part of the reason he ended up leaving the law firm, which tells me that he probably knows a lot about Tom Girardi not paying his clients. If you had a blow up over a specific case where clients weren't paid, that says a lot to me. But both Lira and Griffin are saying, we told Tom to pay. We didn't have access to the funds. Tom didn't pay. The victims are saying that, okay, maybe Lira and Griffin didn't have access to those funds, but they should still be held accountable because they knew that Tom was withholding those funds and they should have at least reported it, and they didn't. So they failed to do their duty to the clients by not reporting Tom Girardi. Yes, they left the firm probably because they saw a history of this type of stuff going on with Tom and they didn't want to be dragged down with him, especially if David Lira, who is Tom's son-in-law, did have a blowout with him and left the company over Tom not paying the settlement money or holding on to the settlement money. It shows that David probably has a lot of information into this embezzlement scheme that had been going on for, at this point, 3 decades. So we'll see what happens with them. Now, Tom Girardi and Tom's bookkeeper are both potentially going to be called into court to testify during these contempt proceedings. But Tom's lawyer has already said that you can try to bring Tom and put him on the stand, but he's not going to say anything. He's going to plead the fifth. I would think it would be smart for him to speak, because then he could also incriminate David, Lira and Keith Griffin, and be like, hey, they were culpable. They were a part of this scandal. It doesn't seem like David or Keith have any loyalty to Tom at this point. So I would think it would help Tom's case to bring them down with him, because now it just looks like the opposite. But in order for Tom to bring them down with him, Tom would then have to admit some sort of guilt. And I believe part of his legal strategy is to not admit any guilt and to just kind of be like, I'm not of sound mind. I'm not mentally competent to do any of this, nor be held accountable, because as we know, they can't take any legal action or file any criminal charges against somebody that is mentally incapacitated, or a lawyer that's mentally incapacitated. He has voluntarily given up his law license. The California State Bar did not remove that. He voluntarily gave that up because he was under conservatorship with his brother, or from his brother. How do you say that? Under conservatorship by his brother? I don't know what the grammatically correct way to say that is, but you get what I'm saying. So Tom says, I'm not going to if you bring me in to testify, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to plead the fifth. His bookkeeper is also saying the same thing. His bookkeeper, however, doesn't seem to be recently diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. So TBD, up in the air on how culpable the bookkeeper is. I'm pretty sure the bookkeeper has a lot of shit. And at this point, we'll probably turn on Tom, but what benefit does it give David, Lira, Keith Griffin, or the bookkeeper to even turn on Tom? Because again, they can't reprimand a lawyer that's not of sound mind. So at this point, it really looks like Tom Girardi is just going to sail off into another ding-dong ditch and, be fine playing this pretend amnesia card, or potentially, having Alzheimer's and dementia. Whether or not that's real, I've had my doubts. I don't fully believe that he's as mentally incapacitated as he's claiming to be. We know on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Erica is kind of alluding to that. My impression of her kind of bringing that up, it sounds like, and this is where I think it actually may benefit her case, is it sounds like she thinks that all of these, all of this scandal is recent, and that, it was only in recent years, as he was starting to have this mental decline, that is what led to him not paying clients. Is maybe he was forgetting, maybe he was, tripping, maybe he was whatever, but it seems like she seems to believe, based off of what she's revealed on the show, it seems like she seems to believe that his mental capacity issues and awareness and memory were starting to affect Tom to the point where he wasn't paying clients. Whether or not that's true, whether or not you want to believe her, that's neither here nor there, but that seems to be the position that she's playing in the show currently. We're now seeing that the LA Times article is dropped. The women are reacting to that. That's apparently going to be played in further. Apparently there's going to be a scuffle in this meeting that Sutton has called at Dorit's house about Erica and her concerns, which I think is very valid. I think for Sutton, it's valid to be like, hey, I don't know her that well, but this doesn't look good. How does this may potentially affect my business in the future or currently? I think it's natural for Sutton to have these questions. I think a lot of the other women are having those same reservations at that point in time. They're just not fully vocalizing that. But I'm pretty sure there's that trepidation amongst all of the women at this point. So we'll see what happens. We'll see how it continues to play out. We'll see what happens to Mr. Tom Girardi. Regardless of whether or not he'll get away criminally, I think he's already gotten, the brunt of his ego being bruised by the fact that he's no longer the top lawyer. He's lost control, he's lost power, he's lost notoriety, he's lost the clout that he once had, because not only does he not have that now, but everything he's done over the past 3 decades has now been invalidated by the fact that there were several instances where he wasn't paying clients money. So the house of cards that he had has officially crumbled, and I think that's more crushing to him is the loss of his reputation, because you see he was bragging about all the awards that he was getting. He was bragging about all the magazines that he was featured on. He loved being this big, bad, powerful attorney. He loved having all these other women that he was paying for plastic surgery for and taking care of. And, they would be arm candy for him because he was able to provide that lifestyle for him, Erica Jane included. So, yikesies. Okay, Real Housewives of New York news. So apparently the rumors that we've been hearing, or a lot more of them, are seemingly true. Now, we know Ramona has denied in some comments with fans of Ramona. She's denied that she's been fired from the show. She says that she hasn't been fired. And like I said, I don't think anybody has actually been fired or offered any contracts. It's too early into this season for them to even think about casting for next season. And it does seem like they're planning on taking a bit of a pause, the same way they did with OC, the same way they may be doing with Dallas, the same way it looks like they're doing with Real Housewives of Atlanta. They're taking pauses in between these shows to really make sure that they're getting the formula right. I think they've gotten a little sloppier with casting in the past couple years, and that's why, they need to have more of the attention on all of this. The rumor about the rumor about the network taking over casting away from the producers and from Andy, that's not true. I believe I broke that down on the Instagram Live too last week, where basically the hierarchy of how these shows are run are the producers are the ones that are kind of on the field. They're the ones that put together the Bible of the storylines and the directions each of the women's lives are going to be playing on the show individually and collectively as the season unfolds. They're the ones that do all the interviews with all of the housewives prior to the season's filming. All of that information that's collected in the Bible is then passed up to the executives. Those are the people like Andy Cohen. They review it, they look everything over, they give some notes, the producers make edits, and then it goes up the chain until it hits the network. The network is the one that has final say on everything. So ultimately, they have final say on casting regardless. That's not really anything new. The brunt of the legwork is done by the producers. And then you have the executive producers, which are Andy Cohen, who give feedback, but they're not really the ones that are making a lot of the big heavy lifting decisions. And then the network really just kind of reviews and is like yay or nay, pass or, or move forward, green light. So the rumor about them taking casting away from Andy doesn't have sole control over casting. He's part of an executive team that is allowed to weigh in on casting decisions, but doesn't have absolute say. He's even been open about that. There have been, like Tinsley Mortimer. He didn't want Tinsley Mortimer cast on Real Housewives of New York, but she ended up cast on the show. He didn't want Bethany Frankel cast on Real Housewives of New York. She ended up on the show. So he doesn't have absolute power as it is. Nor do the producers, I guess the network sort of does. They have final say. So that's just kind of how that hierarchy works. That rumor isn't true. But apparently the rumors about the reunion are true. So it looks like the reunion for New York should have been happening by now. We're halfway through August. I would imagine we have until August, September. I would imagine the season wraps by the end of September, at the latest early October. Let's see what number of episodes we're on currently. But I mean, everything is a little up in the air with New York right now. Ramona doesn't appear to be fired. Neither does Eboni or Leah. Nobody seems to be fired, but nobody has been offered an official contract. But again, that's not uncommon. That's something that typically doesn't happen until the reunion has been filmed. And after the reunion is filmed is when conversations about casting for next season begin, because at that point, production for the current season has wrapped, and now we start talking about the next season. Doesn't look like there's going to be a rush to do casting anytime soon, but the interesting part is it doesn't look like, or at least right now, they're considering not having a New York reunion, which would be really strange. But not only does it look like the reunion is delayed, but it doesn't seem to be off the table that there won't be a reunion at all, which I find surprising, but apparently that seems to be one of the options that's being weighed at the moment. Why that would even be an option is so wild to me. I feel like it shouldn't be that hard to get these women together in a room to be able to film a reunion. Like, most of them are pros. This is Eboni's first one. It would kind of be interesting if it's her first one. It was a terrible season. They have no reunion. This would be the first time that, a housewife show doesn't have a reunion, which to me is shocking. And even if they do have a reunion, I feel like it's probably going to come a couple weeks after the finale, because usually they take like a good 4 or 5 weeks in between the actual filming of the show or filming of the reunion and when the finale actually airs. Let's see what episode we're on currently on Real Housewives of New York. We do have a new episode this week, but I want to see how many episodes. Obviously, we don't know how many episodes are going to be in the season altogether, but it looks like we are currently on, hold on, I'm scrolling. Give me a minute. Don't hate me. Okay, it looks like we're on episode 16 currently. Or actually, no, sorry. Episode 16 is the last episode that is in the, or listed on like TV Guide. But it looks like we are currently on episode Being and Ramoning, episode 15. So we have episode 15 this week, episode 16 next week. Typically, we have about 20 to 22 episodes. Last season, we had 21 episodes and a 3-part reunion. The season prior, we had 17 episodes and a 3-part reunion. So it looks like we're getting a finale probably in the next 4 weeks, possibly 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Yeah, it looks like I would imagine it would be a 20-episode season. We know that the COVID seasons have been a bit shorter because of filming restrictions, which Andy Cohen has even talked about. So it seems like we're 5 weeks out from getting a finale, which means if there's going to be a reunion, I would imagine the reunion would be happening like this week or next week at the latest. But as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's any definite plan. And like I said, there's the possibility of them not even having a reunion. I feel like that's highly unlikely, but the fact that that's even up for consideration right now is like wildly shocking to me. And I also find it interesting that like Eboni continues to talk to the press. She continues to blame producers. She recently was like, well, it's not my fault that the show is sinking. You need to blame the veterans for the show being so bad this season. I think she's played such an important role this season that it's a little naive to think that she has no part in the show this season or no part in whether or not the show was a hit or not. I think she's correct in the fact that like ultimately production, they're the ones that have the full power in terms of, or full responsibility in terms of whether or not the show is successful or not, because they're the ones that are following the storylines. They're the ones that are, directing the crew as to which things to focus on when filming. They're the ones that are scheduling different filming dates with the women together. They're the ones that are ultimately driving the narratives. They interview the women and see like which storylines seem hot. The network then approves those storylines. So it seems like Eboni is right in the sense that the network, the execs and the producers are the ones that are responsible for whether or not the show is successful or not. You can't really put that on the women. But I also agree that Ramona and Luann are really phoning it in this season. I think Sonia is a little unbearable to watch this season. I'm not enjoying her at all. She's really annoying me this season. She's getting drunk a lot, but like also like just annoying drunk, like not funny drunk, not sloppy drunk, but like yelling and just, I just find her really annoying this season. So I feel like the 3 veterans really aren't holding their weight. I think Leah is doing the best that she can, but she's obviously coming off wildly unlikable to a lot of people. I've had a love-hate relationship with Leah. I didn't love her coming into the season. She's kind of grown on me a little bit in these past couple of episodes. I love that she wasn't afraid to talk about not voting. I love that she wasn't afraid to call out Eboni when Eboni was trying to bring up the fact that she thinks that she wanted to make sure that the women on the cast weren't white supremacists or supporting white supremacy. And Eboni was like, wait a minute, but didn't you endorse Donald Trump? Like, weren't you a big Trump fan and you were a fan of building the wall? And then, Eboni was kind of like, well, my mom voted for Trump, yes. And that's a hard position that I'm in, but she never really addressed her own endorsement of Donald Trump herself, which I think, people are starting to see a bit of that hypocrisy. And that's not to say that people can't change or grow and evolve. I'm the first one to advocate for growth and evolution and giving people space to grow. But when you look at, a situation like Vanderpump Rules last year where you had like Max Boyens and Brett who were tweeting things from 10 years ago, and then there's this big uproar and we're firing them for things that they tweeted 10 years ago. But yeah, Eboni's tweets from 4 years ago that have surfaced, aren't held to that same or even any remotely similar standard at all. I think that's like if it were a white housewife, I think, she would be crucified right now. And I'm probably going to get ripped apart for even saying that. But I just think there are a lot of double standards. And I've said it before. I like Eboni. I just don't think she's a fit on this show. And I think producers probably wanted her to talk a lot about race. Understandably, that's what was prevalent in our country at that time. So it was an important conversation to be had. I think the way that we're addressing it on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is very true and honest and organic. We see people like Kathy Hilton and Dorit having these slip up moments of saying things that they don't realize or that they're not aware of, can be tone deaf. Like with Dorit saying that, she hires a lot of people of color in her house to make sure that diversity is introduced to her children. Obviously, that was a very, tone deaf thing to say. And Garcelle and Crystal checked her on that, which, I think that was a very organic way to have that conversation and then also have closure to the end of that conversation and be able to have these conversations. I mean, we had the same conversation with Garcelle and Kyle at the beginning of the season where Kyle was very receptive and was like, I didn't understand how outing you for not paying paying the auction bill on the reunion. I didn't understand how that may affect you as a Black woman. And I apologize for that. And, I'm willing to move through this. I'm willing to learn and let's have this conversation and then let's move through this conversation. I do believe that Ramona isn't necessarily giving Eboni space to have that conversation. So I think Ramona is hindering it as well. And you can't put the full blame onto Eboni. But I also feel like Eboni's pushing it really hard. And I think there may have been an ulterior campaign or agenda to kind of boost her reputation through the Housewives to get her another opportunity elsewhere. I know I've had other podcasters on this show that have said that, they think she would be a good fit, like on The View. I don't see that being far-fetched from an opportunity that she thought. I mean, we see it happened with Garcelle, and Garcelle ended up on The Talk. So I'm pretty sure somebody like Eboni, that's a really smart businesswoman, thought that this would be a great opportunity for her to come on the show, have a conversation like this. Whether or not her current values on the show align with her history, I think that's where I've gotten a little iffy and my head has turned a little bit. But I think that she thought that this was the best way to approach it. And granted, to be fair, there was that was the conversation that we were all having in our country at the time that this was being filmed. It does feel a little forced though. And I think there was pressure from the producers to push that further, mainly because she was the first Black woman to be cast on Real Housewives of New York. They knew that this was an important year and this was going to be an important time to make a statement. And I think there was a lot of pressure from the network to make these big, bold statements. We saw them fire half the cast of Vanderpump Rules. We saw them taking these big actions. And I think they thought this was going to be part of it and it was going to be received well, which it was. But now we're just seeing that there is a bit of a disconnect because it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't feel I think Beverly Hills is doing a great job of addressing that. I don't know if New York is executing it at that level. Maybe we do need more women. Maybe we need more people of color on the show. I think it's easier for Garcelle when she has Crystal there and you have two women of color. You also have, the Beverly Hills ladies that are a little more willing to listen and a little more willing to have those conversations and are willing to kind of mess up. We saw Sutton mess up in her conversation with Crystal. She's since come out and said, I didn't give Crystal an opportunity to share her perspective or where she was coming from growing up as a young girl that's Chinese in Los Angeles or in America. I cut her off and didn't allow myself to hear her experience, but I also prevented the audience from allowing them to hear Crystal's experience, which is important, And so I think there's a little more willingness on Beverly Hills that we're not really getting on New York. So Eboni says that she wants to come back. So it sounds, but I mean, the way that she's shading producers and shading the other cast members and saying that it's basically all of their fault, I think that's a little bold considering, she does have such a prominent role this season that you can't say that she's not to blame, but it's unfair to make her the sole blame. I think Leah is also really, the fans really aren't loving her. She's not showing us her best self. So I think it's just a messy season overall, which we're all entitled to. We're all entitled to have a messy moment, a bad year, a bad season. what happens is how we bounce back from that, because New York was one of the ultimate supremes that is now trickling down. We also got the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City trailer, which I know a lot of people were excited about. I was excited for the release of the trailer. It seems like Bravo is starting to amp up these releases. They were teasing that the trailer was coming. They said there's a snowstorm coming. They were tweeting that out. So it seems like they're getting a little savvier about when they're going to do these trailer drops. I was a bit underwhelmed. I expected more from the Salt Lake City trailer. I thought the Beverly Hills trailer was done pretty well because they really addressed the Girardi scandal head on in the trailer and have shown us in the original trailer and in the mid-season trailer that, they take us through the journey and the experiences and the emotions of the other women as this scandal is breaking. I don't feel like we got that in the Salt Lake City trailer. I don't feel like we barely scratched the surface on the Jen Shah stuff. And we know that cameras were there when the feds came to arrest Jen Shah. She had obviously fled, but we got none of that backstory that we know is already in the press. Jen Shah fleeing, Jen Shah getting a call and saying she has to leave, the women getting interrogated. Obviously, I'm sure there's not much they can show about the women being questioned by the feds, but I mean, give us some of that. We got none of that. All we got was a B-roll shot of her leaving when she was leaving, after she had been arrested, when she was coming out of the courthouse, or was that the jail? I don't remember if it was the court. I think it was jail that she was coming out of. But that's all we got. But we had already gotten that in photos and B-roll footage of when the story originally broke. So to me, that wasn't really anything interesting. We didn't hear her talk about it too much. There were really only 2 scenes, 2 group events where we see them really even addressing it, and she seems to be deflecting and blaming Meredith for the reason that she was indicted. Whether or not that's true, come on. That's like when Teresa was like, it's Caroline and Jacqueline's fault that I was arrested. It's like, no, it was your husband's fault that you were arrested because he was the one that was cheating and defrauding the IRS and the lenders, and come on. It's another perfect example of clear deflection. So it looks like it's going to be a good season. I'm curious to see how they address all of the Mary Crosby cult rumors. That was really prominent in the trailer. Maybe that was part of Bravo's tactic, was to focus on that because we all already know about the Jen Shah stuff, that we don't want it to be too predictable. But the Mary cult stuff, her church being a cult, that seems to be compelling and interesting. I think that'll probably be the head of the season, and that's why we focus so much on it in this trailer and in the mid-season trailers, where we'll probably get more of the Jen Shah stuff. But I want the Jen Shah stuff. Let me see her get arrested. Obviously, we know they didn't catch that exact moment, but give us something, Bravo. I was a little underwhelmed. I had higher expectations for that trailer, and I don't think it was fully executed to the best of its ability. That's just me. That's just how I feel. It's expensive to be me. Thank you guys for listening to #NoFilter with Zack Peter. That's me. You can give me a follow at Just Plain Zack. Follow the show at NoFilter with Zack. Join our private Facebook group and get ready for our book club. We're going to be going live every Tuesday night on the Instagram account at NoFilter with Zack. We're going to be doing our book club. We also do live chats every Thursday night on Instagram. The broadcast is then shared on the YouTube. So join our live chats. They're going to be a lot of fun if you want to read Dorinda's book with us. Order it this week. Link is in the description below, and be sure to get ready because our official book club meeting begins on Tuesday, August 24th on the live Instagram. Order No Filter Wine at nofilterwine.com. Send me your pics of when you're drinking these, whether you're sneaking it into the Ubers like me, or you're drinking it at the beach, soaking up the last of summer, or whether you're in the pool, or whether you're drinking it as you're watching the shows. Like you're drinking I Stole Kim's Goddamn House while watching Beverly Hills. That's what I want to see. Send me your pics so I can share them, and get ready because there's a new Potomac can that's going to be dropping very, very soon. Very soon. All right, guys. I love you. I appreciate you. Please leave me a 5-star review because I love that validation, and I will talk to you this Wednesday with Gigi from Shaws of Sunset. All right. Love ya. Bye.